Finance Minister and Minister for Economic Growth, Honourable Nicola Willis. There you go, here a clap now. You started it. This could be a really long speech. And Immigration Minister, the Honourable Erica Stanford. And like me, he didn't wear a tie. Also here, Trade and Investment Minister, Honourable Todd McClay, who's sitting with us. Okay, that's enough of the clapping, and welcome to you all. We've got big bankers, big business, VCs, funds, investment houses, industry associations, philanthropists, consultants in relevant fields, and I'm sure a bunch of other great people here also. Finally, can I acknowledge Working In, our partner today, without whom we couldn't do this. Of course, Working In is a leading provider of employer-focused immigration services that has been helping Kiwi businesses find and secure the international skills they need to succeed for over 25 years. Which brings me to immigration, an issue most nations and peoples, and the Prime Minister and I was talking about this, have a complicated and often a schizophrenic relationship to. I hope and want to believe New Zealand is different. Whereas much of the world tears itself up politically around immigration issues, New Zealand's moat of thousands of kilometres of water keeps us somewhat insulated and certainly remote. Moreover, more than most countries, we are all immigrants to one degree or another, living on the last large land mass to be inhabited by humans in the world. And so I think we're generally more relaxed about immigration than others. That said, I don't think, and I'm sure you don't, it's why you're here, we think enough in New Zealanders, I should say, understand how important immigration can be to our economic success. It's the IT workers transforming someone's business, or a new migrant doing many other highly skilled roles we don't have people for. It's the international student eating out and going to the movies and working at a bar, as well as paying export dollars to us. But it's also, if we're candid, New Zealanders doing jobs other Kiwis often don't want to, in rest homes and rubbish trucks and many other places besides, and we need to be, I think, real about that. And importantly for today, it's also higher net worth individuals and families who want to be here, and when they are, go on to invest here, making our country more prosperous and more connected, and frankly, more exciting. Almost to accompany our biggest, best and most exciting businesses have benefited from new Kiwis who've invested and opened up their Rolodexes, or more accurately today, their iPhones, whether those businesses are Xero or Rocket Lab or others. And we wouldn't have our best golf courses, restaurants, vineyards, public art collections or sports teams had we not been generous enough, or simply smart enough actually, to roll out the welcome mat to wealthy foreigners who've decided they love New Zealand enough to commit to it and call it home. My understanding is that early into the new year, having been clear that now New Zealand must go for growth, the Prime Minister is today in a position to be clear about what the government will do around some of these issues. That is very welcome news for every single person, I think, in this room. And why, when we planned for about 100, I think we've got about 200, maybe more. Some of you didn't pay, but that's all right. And so, Prime Minister, we welcome you to this podium, and we really look forward to your remarks this afternoon.
Well, kia ora, good afternoon everybody. It's absolutely fantastic to be here. Can I say, Simon, thank you very much for that context setting. Thank you also for being the Don Johnson of New Zealand business. What do we think of the Simon Bridges stubble? We think it's sort of becoming? It's sort of, yeah, I think it's all right. I think you're getting support for that, mate. But listen, I also want to acknowledge our fantastic ministers who are here with me today. We've got our Economic Growth Minister, our fantastic Finance Minister, Nicola Willis. We've got our Immigration Minister, but also our Education Minister doing an awesome job, in Erica Stanford. And we've got Trade McClay, as I call him, doing trade and investment all around the world. We're lucky to have him in the country today because he's usually out and about doing other things. But I can tell you, like me, they are laser focused on actually getting this country moving again. And I want to thank all the three of you actually for the hard work that you're doing on behalf of New Zealand. And I also just want to acknowledge all of you in this room because from the investment community, whether you are the people that help build the networks and create the connections, the advisors and lawyers who help people navigate our New Zealand system, or investors and potential investors with an interest in our small but mighty country, can I say thank you for being here today as we announce what I think are significant changes to New Zealand's investor migrant settings to help unleash this country's great potential and great economic growth potential that sits here. And the interest and the excitement in the work that has been underway in this space over the last 6 months, I think, is evidenced by the number of incredible people in this room. And it's also evident by the many conversations I get to have up and down this country with people like you across all of New Zealand. Certainly been a really whirlwind start to the year. Todd and I began by signing a trade deal, but most importantly a bilateral investment treaty with the UAE. We've announced major reforms to our science and innovation sector, and we've obviously a refreshed team for 2025, and I think we've hit the ground running. And by now, as Simon alluded to, I hope you've picked up that the one constant thing that this government is doing this year is growth, growth and more growth. That's what this year is going to be all about. And the reason's very simple. A growing economy creates opportunities for all. It means better infrastructure. It means better roads that are safer to drive on and allow for faster and cheaper movements of goods around the country and to export. It means shorter waiting times at the hospital with improved facilities and more medicines and more doctors and surgeons. A growing economy means that we can invest more in our children's education. We're able to have better resources in our classrooms and much more support for our teachers so that we're offering our kids the world-class education experience that's going to set them up for future success. And growth delivers more jobs, higher incomes and improved public services and a better quality of life for us all. And it also means making our contribution to solutions to important things like breakthroughs in medicine, sustainability and also climate change. So if you caught any of my State of the Nation speech a couple of weeks ago, it's exactly why I was saying that we need to say a lot more yes and a lot less no in New Zealand. Yes to getting on with the projects that create jobs and deliver national and regional benefits across the country. Yes to engaging with the world more, forging new trade agreements and making it easier for exporters to reach new and growing markets. Yes to innovation and technology. Yes to startups. Yes to entrepreneurship. And yes to the people with the skills and the expertise, the networks, and yes, the capital that we actually need for our country to build on our existing success. Because if we want the higher incomes and the ability to invest more in those public services I mentioned earlier, this has to be our mindset, a growth mindset. And that can-do attitude that New Zealand is built on is exactly the same mindset that will carry us well into our future. Kiwis, I'm telling you, can do anything when we put our mind to it. And that's something that this country has proven time and time again. We are a nation of 5 million people in a big world of 8 billion people. And it is the connections that we actually have with the rest of the world through trade, through investment, that's going to guarantee our future prosperity. So there is so much more opportunity out there in the world. But in recent years, I think we've done a very poor job of attracting and welcoming people that we know we could build mutually beneficial relationships with. For way too long, New Zealand has put up the shutters on investment. We've been reluctant to recognise the benefits for Kiwis from attracting overseas investment to this country. And there is billions of dollars in capital out there that investors are looking to find a home for. And investors have the potential to provide jobs for Kiwis, to lift our incomes by supporting new businesses and investing in the existing ones that are thirsty for capital injection to leverage growth. And I think we've got to roll out the welcome mat and incentivise investors to choose New Zealand as a destination, not just for their capital, skills and international connections, but in an increasingly uncertain and complex world to build a life for themselves and their family here in a country of unparalleled beauty, with a stable democracy, full of welcoming people who share the values of innovation, hospitality and equal opportunity. But for the past 6 years, instead of a welcome mat, a fence has been in the way. And we have made incredible people with invaluable knowledge, expertise and connections navigate a very complex and restrictive settings system. And the result has been a sharp decline in the number of investor class applicants, alongside a decline in the value of those investments as well. And to give you a feel for it, since the changes were made in 2022, approximately $70 million of investment has actually made it into New Zealand, investing in just 13 businesses. And if you compare that to the $2.2 billion that was invested in the 2 years before the pandemic, and we are falling woefully short. So that's an opportunity. And so today I am very pleased to announce the next step in our comprehensive plan to turbocharge the New Zealand economy. The government will modernise the Active Investor Plus visa to encourage more foreign investment into New Zealand. We're dusting off the welcome mat and we're rolling it back out by making it simpler and by making it easier to invest in this country. And so from the 1st of April this year, we will introduce 2 new investment categories under the Active Investor Plus visa. I wanted to call them ambitious and really ambitious, but we've settled on the names of growth and balanced. And in the growth category, we're going to focus on higher risk investments, including direct investments into New Zealand businesses or managed funds with a minimum investment of $5 million. And in the balanced category, we will actually target lower risk investments, but with a minimum investment of $10 million. And for the growth category, we're actually shortening the time that investors need to spend in the country. We're also shortening the investment period from 4 to 3 years, but importantly, those funds must now be fully invested for the entire 3 years. And we're also removing the English language requirement that has put off so many potential investors. And I want to be clear about that because it's not because potential investors can't speak English, because many can. It's because if you're someone with a huge number of choices about where you invest your time, your expertise and your money, being asked to actually sit a test like you're back in high school doesn't exactly say welcome to New Zealand. So that's the rationale behind that. Now, the government's new investment attraction agency, which we announced at the State of the Nation speech, called Invest New Zealand, which Todd will lead, will promote investment into New Zealand to the world, and it will also support these migrant investors coming into the country. Invest New Zealand will be actively involved in supporting investor migrants navigate the landscape here by introducing them to local networks and opportunities for further investments. And for some of you in the room who know it well, it's the same model that works so successfully in places like Ireland and Singapore. And these changes are all about making our investor visa simpler and much more flexible to attract a broader range of investors. This isn't just about attracting money, because when overseas investors choose New Zealand, they don't just bring their capital. They bring their networks. They bring their expertise and their new technologies, which matched with our great people and with their can-do attitude and their innovative ideas and well-established history in punching above our weight, I think creates true magic. So it's about building long-term partnerships for the mutual benefit of both New Zealanders and the people who want to build connections here and hopefully over time put down roots in our communities and make New Zealand home. And this creates the opportunities for our businesses to grow and for our young people to learn new skills and to find rewarding careers, and it helps our communities thrive. So it's also about saying yes to investment and growth in New Zealand. And the evidence suggests that investors get to know our market, they build trusted networks, and they become even more active and often commit to additional investments as they come across new and exciting ventures. Follow-on investments from previous investor migrants were worth approximately $1.7 billion. And that's the kind of long-term relationship that we want to be part of. So I'd like to personally thank those of you who have worked incredibly closely with Erica and all of her team on these changes. I know Erica's team and her officials have engaged with a number of people in the investment community on stress testing these ideas and making sure that what we are designing is actually fit for purpose and will work. And this is frankly what I expect a lot more of from my whole team, because as you all know in this room, the answers don't lie in Wellington, they often lie with the people who do this work every day, as is the experience here. So these changes are part of this government's broader economic strategy to position New Zealand for success in an increasingly globally competitive economy. And whether it's signing new trade deals, whether it's reforming the science and innovation sector, fixing our education system or cutting the red tape, this government is going to do everything we can to unleash the country's economic potential. So today again, I declare that New Zealand is open for business and investment, and this is a government that's going to say yes to growth, yes to opportunity, and yes to a much more prosperous future for all New Zealanders. And because when we attract investment, we are investing in our collective future, in better jobs, in stronger communities, and in the kind of New Zealand that we all want to live in and to prosper in. So again, can I say thank you so much for being here this afternoon. Looking forward to the conversation with Simon and others through the course of the afternoon. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Prime Minister. Let's get Nicola Willis and Erica Stanford on the stage as well. Welcome. Prime Minister, I'm glad you like the beard. I feel like here is a constant theme in our relationship.
I live vicariously through you and your hair.
It's funny, actually, I wanted the beard for the state.
Can't all be good-looking bald men, you know. You've got to have some hairy dudes.
Well, it's a bit of a trend in prime ministers around the world, I think we're saying. But I was going to wear it for the old State of the Nation, but I went into the barber's and he pushed the chair back and I fell asleep and I woke up and I had this pencil beard. I looked a bit like Craig David and I didn't think it worked, so that was that. Anyway, Prime Minister, I mean, thank you for that announcement. I mean, at first blush it sounds really good. It does sound inviting. I suppose the question is, are you satisfied that it's enough of a welcome mat? I mean, we're in a low to no growth environment. It's a very competitive world. Are we doing enough in this area around investor migrants as a result of today's announcement?
Well, look, I'm always constructively dissatisfied, as I say to my team, about where we're going, whether can we not go harder, faster and do more, and there's a lot more for us to do. So let's be clear, this is one piece of a long program that Nicola's going to lead us out on our economic growth plan. But yes, this is really competitive. Nothing like this exists in the UK or Australia. And when I think about the opportunities that this creates for people and that future investment, and then once they come into a market, get familiar with it, get trusted with it, and they actually want to spend more money and see more opportunities, that's always a very good thing. So, yeah, I think this is a fantastic, great move on the active investor class, which has been, as I said, when we were only bringing in $70 million for 13 projects, and we previously did $2.2 billion, I think actually it'll be a small group of people, I suspect, ultimately, but it'll have a massive amount of value attached to it, and therefore that has huge benefit for New Zealanders. And my message is that I want regular Kiwis to understand investment like this is fantastic for New Zealand, because that's actually what lifts those businesses, gets them growing, that gets them higher incomes, that gets them the jobs, and we want a lot more of it. So, yeah, I think it's great.
I mean, it seems to me, start of the year, you're putting pieces of a puzzle together. We've got Invest New Zealand, we've got this. I mean, without giving the game away at a level, I mean, give us a sense of that. And, there are other pieces that are vital. I mean, I think, one of the things I've said to you is, at the State of the Nation, I think critical is going to be the overseas investment law reform, for example. So just have a sense of that puzzle and the pieces.
Yeah, look, I mean, Nicola will talk more about it, but I mean, we've talked about for the last year, there's 5 components. When we look at how we fundamentally have to lift New Zealand's living standards, it comes back to a world-class education system, which is what Erica's doing with her work in education. It makes sure that we actually invest in science, technology, innovation and R&D, and we commercialise it so we get higher value products and services sold to the world. We need modern, reliable infrastructure, which is where the investment comes in as well, to help us get that infrastructure built faster, quicker, better, to get the economic, social and environmental benefits of that. We want more competition in all of our markets, as you heard me talk at the State of the Nation from the OECD report, but we know instinctively we need that, and we need a lot less red tape. And then the final piece is we need strong trade and investment connections to the world. And if you look at those 5 things and you look at other 5 million people countries on earth and ask why are they wealthier than us, it comes back to those 5 foundational things. So we'll be unpacking more of that agenda over the course of the coming months, and Nicola will lead that work with us.
And I think just, Prime Minister, another one, I see Matthew Hooden on Fridays piling on the pressure for Nirvana from your investment summit. I mean, is that on day one? I mean, is that's obviously part of this? How does that fit in with, what you're doing in the first part of this year?
Yeah, look, I mean, well, you've seen us, go through digital nomads to try and encourage people to work from here while they're on a working holiday, which is fantastic. You've seen us actually sign bilateral investment treaties with the UAE, which gives permission for the capital of capital, frankly, to invest in a country like New Zealand. You've seen us make this announcement today. We'll have more to talk about. But yes, it's probably one of the worst kept secrets. Thank you, Fran O'Sullivan, for that we have an investor summit coming up, and we're really much looking forward to that. And that is about saying, look, we know we have a big infrastructure deficit. We know there's a lot of public infrastructure we want to get built, and there are partners, and the world is awash with cash, and we are not getting our fair share of it here to New Zealand. They now have investors that I think internationally are open to investing in New Zealand. We have a government that's very open to receiving that investment, and the summit is is designed to actually educate about the opportunities that are here, and then obviously for the new Invest New Zealand facility and agency to then pick up those opportunities and get the connection happening. So we can talk about the possibilities and we can talk about the marketing, but we've actually got to go get the sales job done, as I say, and actually get the money into the country and invest it here.
I said we're got a giant moat around us, and I know you agree with that. I mean, it's undeniable. We look at other parts of the world and they're tearing themselves up around immigration. I mean, Germany's, you've got 1 million people coming in. Other parts of the world, the United States, it's a massive issue. I wonder if we haven't got the opposite problem, though, which is that actually we just don't have enough. I mean, I think it was RNZ in the last week or two has been talking about, interviewing economists saying the potential for actually net export of people. I mean, what are your, I suppose, ultimately views around that, Prime Minister? Is it a question of actually we need to get to 10 million and have a population policy? I know you're not going to commit to that right at this moment, but yeah, well, that's always a worry. But is that talk to us about that issue?
I think, in terms of New Zealand's immigration settings, if you look at Canada and New Zealand, they've probably been the two in the world where the social licence for immigration has been strongly held. And I think, that is in many ways because we've actually made sure our immigration is linked to our investment, our infrastructure, and also to our economic strategy. When it gets beyond that, that's when you start to lose social investment, as you've seen in Western Europe and other parts of the world. So I think, Erica, has done a good job of actually, and it's a very dynamic world in terms of the demand supply of immigrants and what the needs are in our economy of matching that together. But there's no doubt about it, when you look at our investment profile, we've been at the bottom of the OECD in attracting foreign direct investment to New Zealand. And, we shouldn't be in that position given we've got a fantastic future in this country. I mean, we have no reason why we can't be the most advanced, successful, small economy country in the world, period. If you take a step back, we've got we've got lots of abundant natural resources. We're in bang smack in the middle of the Indo-Pacific region. We have really strong social and democratic institutions, and we have amazingly talented, world-class people. So with all of that, you look back and zoom out and say, well, actually now it's upon all of us to actually go out and actually make that happen with some ambition and some aspiration and some excellence and some can-do. And that's what's actually needed here, because I think we do have a great future. We want that for our kids and our grandkids, so they choose to stay here because they can see if they work hard, they get ahead. They can actually deliver a world-class education system. We can actually get healthcare for their parents, and they can feel safe in our communities. So that's what our government's very, very focused on, is realising the potential that sits in this joint. We can't do it on our own as government. We actually need business and we need community to step up and actually help us deliver that as the three actors in our society. But it's a pretty exciting future.
Look, I agree. I think just finally, if you, Prime Minister, at this point, I mean, I do, as we have a discussion around immigration, economic growth, just want to think about at a high level that issue of, work rights. It seems to me, if you're a business and you want a really highly qualified tech worker who's earning 180 grand a year, you'll get them in. But I do wonder if we're quite good enough at the moment around actually the less glamorous kind of diploma level tech worker, the truck drivers and so on, and whether that's a piece of work. High level, and do you have a sense of that? I appreciate at the moment we've got 5.1% unemployment, but it does seem to me actually at the lower levels we still need those lesser skilled workers, and there's perhaps an issue there. Yeah,
look, as I said, I mean, the real opportunity is to link immigration to our economic agenda and also to our capacity to build infrastructure. We don't want, if you can't join and square those three things up, that's a real problem. But the only thing I would say is that in the last administration, we had an unemployment of 3.2% and we had 70,000 more people go on the job seeker benefit in New Zealand. So, we're also very conscious of, that's why you've seen us put welfare obligations in place for job seekers, because frankly, get a resume, show up to an interview, meet your case manager from time to time. Not a big ask, but we actually expect you to be able to take on more of the jobs that are sitting in our economy. So, those two bits go together as well, is that, we want young New Zealanders not on welfare. We want them out there learning in businesses that might have co-investment coming in from overseas, that are teaching them new skills and actually plotting a pathway to work, because work is a lot better than being on welfare. That's much better for all families, all individuals as a result, and we believe that very strongly. But we can't just have a lot of people going on unemployment and then opening up our immigration settings and actually not getting that maths right either. So I think, as Erica can talk to, it's a very challenging thing getting the immigration system and the signal right and the settings right, and they're dynamic, and they need to be dynamic so they adjust to the economic and also the infrastructure needs.
Jess, hey, Nicola, let's bring you in. I mean, everything the Prime Minister and I have just been talking about relates to economic growth. I mean, fundamentally, if we had more people, we had more skills, we had more capital from migrants, we'd have, I was going to say more, but actually some economic growth. You're freshly minted Economic Growth Minister. Set the scene for us, give us a sense of that and what that means for you this year.
Well, look, I think if we're talking to anyone in New Zealand right now, they'll say to you there are so many people in our community who feel poorer after several years of very tough economic times. Many people thought that COVID was going to be the worst of it, and then there was spiking inflation, soaring interest rates, really tough times for many businesses, many families, many communities. So when you look at that problem and you say, how do we fix it? Well, yeah, you've got to do something about the spending, that's important. You've actually got to do something about the revenue so that you've got the ability to invest in the services that New Zealanders want. And you've got to make sure that people can earn more so that they can keep up with the cost of living, and that cost of living is kept under control. So where does that all lead back to, Simon? As you know, the underlying factor there is your economy needs to be growing faster. Because when economies grow faster, that means better paying jobs, it means more opportunities for businesses, it means more ability to sell products, and it means, frankly, more revenue for the Crown to then spend on schools and hospitals and roads. And some people want to take a cheat sheet approach. They want to go, well, can we just accelerate to the bit where we have more revenue? We'll slap on a new tax. And I reject that approach, because actually the more sustainable approach is to say, how can we have better performing industries, sectors, businesses, an environment where more entrepreneurs want to take that next risk, enter that next market, hire that next group of people. It's really tempting to say, here's my silver bullet solution. Anyone who's got one, by the way, feel free to come and tell me afterwards. But actually what we know from economic history is that it is lots of things done very well. It's a cumulative effect. And that means making this a much better place to do business. There's three graphs I think about from an economics perspective. One is the graph which says that New Zealand has had very low rates of productivity growth for several years. Now the reason that matters is New Zealanders work really hard, really long hours compared to many countries around the world. It's just that they don't get to generate as much value out of those hours worked. So the question is, how do they get more value? Then I come to the second graph, and that's rates of capital intensity in our firms, which is to say our businesses are less investing in manufacturing equipment, new technology, the new piece of kit that will make them more productive. Well, why is that? Then I think about the third graph. The third graph, which says, actually, New Zealand has some of the most restrictive settings when it comes to accessing capital in the world. And if you're making it hard for firms to get the capital to make themselves more productive, guess what you get? Low growth rates. So today's announcement fits in that story, because it's all about saying if we want to be a wealthier country, we need to say yes to those people from around the world who have wealth and talent and skill and are prepared to invest in what we've got going on here. And we've got a lot going on here. This is an amazing country with incredible potential, but we've weaponised too many of our laws and regulations against positive development. So whether it's education settings, whether it's investment settings, whether it's just getting a consent to build something, we've made it too hard, and we're on the track as a government of doing a lot of things well across a lot of areas to make it easier to invest and grow businesses in New Zealand.
Right here. But
Sorry, did we mention that Fast Track opened on Friday?
Yeah.
Tessa,
Good.
Yeah.
Tess. But you've been teasing us mercilessly lately with talk of tax reform. What's going on there?
Okay, so first thing you all need to know is there are some parties in Parliament that think the answer to every question is more tax, and there are other parties in Parliament who do not think that is the answer. I'm in a party, the National Party, that thinks that if I can tax you less and still deliver good services to New Zealanders, I should do that, right? So that's the starting position. But here's the second thing. We actually do have to get serious about tax when it comes to businesses and when it comes to corporates and when it comes to enterprise in New Zealand. Because as I said earlier, I want us to be competitive. I want a firm in New Zealand or a farmer in New Zealand or a factory in New Zealand to be able to compete with the world and do so well so that they can pay people in great jobs here. But when we look at what's happened with our tax settings over time, we have become less competitive. Now, there's lots of ways you can cut that, Simon. You can look at the headline rate, the corporate rate, where, we've got out of step with the many countries in the world. But as you in business all know in this room, there's a lot that sits under that in terms of the technical ways that tax rules work. Here's an example that we're looking at right now in our tax policy work program, and that's the FIF rules. Give me a hand if you find the FIF rules frustrating. So looking at those things and how they are applied really matters. But overall, the way I'm looking at tax, Simon, and I'm not going to be giving away what we may or may not do in the budget and what Cabinet may or may not be discussing, is my goal, as I said at the beginning, is I want New Zealand businesses investing more and being more confident about a profitable future. And that, for me, means setting out a vision in which we say we want tax settings which are competitive and which support you to hire more Kiwis, pay them more, generate more growth, generate more revenue.
Okay, so is it A, FIF reform, foreign investment fund? Rob Coley bears back from his far out tour with some of these Americans in the room. They want that one. B, accelerated depreciation, which the Business NZ crowd, or just massive corporate tax cuts, which I'm voting for.
Well, Simon, I'm glad that you've shared with the whole room your fantasies and your dreams. It's very nice to indulge in all of them together. On a serious note, though, it is important that the reforms that we do happen in a context of sustainable government finances. And I know it's sometimes tempting to say, hey, look, just cut them all. Who cares about whether or not we're in deficit? Who cares about debt? I do hear people say that to me from time to time. But ultimately, I think the government has a responsibility to ensure that over time we have sustainable finances so that my kids, your kids and grandkids aren't left saddled with so much debt that when the rainy day inevitably comes with the next big earthquake, the next big financial crisis, the next big pandemic, New Zealand isn't in a position where it can't borrow from the world. So we need sustainable finances. So what thank you. I clap for that. So what I'm working to bring together, Simon, is how do I focus on the growth piece and make sure our settings are driving that while also ensuring that is sustainable over time?
I suppose two questions. I mean, firstly, and Fran Leather thanked me or tell me off for asking this, but she, I thought, provocatively, wrote there was a bit of a conflict there for you as finance minister and growth minister. At one hand you've got to haul the money in, and another you've got to sort of, get it out the door to get growth happening. I mean, do you see that, or you see them working in tandem? Together?
Well, I think they have to work in tandem, and this is the conversation I've been having with the New Zealand Treasury, which is this. I could spend 2 hours tomorrow working out how to get $20 million out of another government department. Okay? I'd much rather spend 2 hours working out how to get $200 million more out of this economy. That is the right way for us to be focusing our efforts and energy, because what we achieve on the growth side ultimately means we'll have better choices and options on the spending side. And so I think the balance is very important, Simon. And in terms of that tension, well, all of us have those tensions in our roles every day. There's the part of us that says get up early and go to the gym, and then there's the part of us that says we'll sleep in. But my view is those constructive tensions are healthy. I also am working with an incredible group of ministers, because it's not me who's working out the detail of immigration reform, it's Erica doing exceptional work. It's not me working out the detail of the next trade agreement, it's Todd doing exceptional work. It's not me working out the detail of how we get more consents out of the door, it's Chris Bishop doing exceptional work. So my job is a leadership job, making sure the resources are going where they're needed, where they can make the biggest difference.
And Simon, as someone who created those two roles and deliberately put them with Nicola, the reason's very simple. On one side she's got the accounting, and on the other side she's got the economics. And so actually she's got both sides of it to be able to work together, not just the one side. And I think actually having NB and having Treasury in the same place actually with Nicola is actually a good place to be right now.
Yeah, if we don't grow the revenue side, the spending side is nice to have.
If there's 185 people in this room, there'll be 185 different views on Donald Trump. And don't worry, I'm not going to ask you about Donald Trump specifically, other than to say, I think one thing he has succeeded in doing is stirring up the animal spirits of business in the United States. And I suppose the question for you is, do you just think, are we a bit incremental? Do we need a bit of that animal spirit in New Zealand?
Yes. So I'm seized by this sense, and I had it again and again over Christmas from people, that they're seeing the pace of change happening in the world. They're seeing how dramatic some of that change is, and they're saying New Zealand better be fast and be on that bus. And so I think the window of opportunity for us to think bolder, to go harder, to go faster is bigger than it's ever been. And it does require a different mindset. And I'll just give you an example, Simon, which is we had this discussion about growing tourism numbers. Because how can it be good for New Zealand that we're only at 86% of what we've been at previously? And so I went out there and said, let's grow them. Let's focus on the growth. And instantly you get into these conversations that are about, oh yes, well we should grow, but only if this and that and this and that. And the problem is the ifs and the buts and the this and the that. Because if we focus our energy on that, we won't get the first thing, which is the growth. And so my mindset shift is to have far less tolerance for the buts and a lot more focus on the going for growth.
Look, final one from me before I turn to Erica for victimisation here. My version of history is I started the China tourism visa chat, but, Fran and the Mayor are also vying for contention on that. You made a few comments on that seem warm. We're going to see change coming in that regard?
Look, we want more tourists from China, full stop. Erica has already done really good work in getting the processing times for tourist visas down considerably, and I'll leave her to talk to those numbers. So the next question for us to be addressing is what more do we do to make it abundantly clear that if you're a Chinese tourist looking to travel around the world, that the best place you can come is New Zealand. So, of course, we've got our minds very open to that, Simon, and I'm very grateful for your interviews on the subject.
Hey, thanks so much, Nicola. Erica, just give us a sense when you appreciate, if you gave us the detail that half the room would switch off, but there are a few immigration lawyers who are really exciting people in the room right now. What have we, give us just a sense of the change here, the detail of what it is that the Prime Minister's announced and where you are seeking to do here.
Look, we have helpfully got a handout, which we didn't quite have enough because we weren't expecting so many people, but there's been a handout go around with some of the nerdy detail. But it is something that we've been focused on for a long time. In fact, even in opposition, we knew exactly where we needed to go. We have made it complicated. There have been multipliers in terms of the process and how much money you need to put in. We've only really been focused on people with a very high risk appetite at the expense of many hundreds of other potential investors who have a lower risk appetite in the first instance, but over time switch to a higher risk appetite. And so that whole portion of the market, which is huge, we've completely lost, as all of the people in the room will know. And the problem is we've only had around about 30 odd investors who have been given their approval in principle in the last almost 3 years. Now, when you think about that number, all of the people in the room who spend their money, so these are lawyers and agents and banks and investment companies who go out to the world and try and attract these investors, when they can see our settings are so restrictive, why would they spend their money and their time out there in the market attracting people? And they're at the point, or they have been at the point, because I've spoken to them, where they're like, actually, it's not worth our while anymore. And so these changes will see what we will see is a much broader range of investor being interested in coming to New Zealand. We saw it in the past under the old settings, and we will see it again. And one thing I want to make very clear is because we've been consulting on this for many months, it was hard to keep contained, but it's better to consult and get it right than keep it secret. And so it's leaked out. We know people know some of the details and have for a while, but what that's done is created a huge amount of interest. And I know 4 lawyers and agents alone between them who have 50 people who are ready to sign on the dot on day one.
Bring it on.
You can compare that to the 30 that we've had in the last 3 years. That's just 4 people. So normally when we start up a new investor visa or we change the settings, we have a massive dip and then it starts to gradually build. I'm not expecting that. I'm expecting a huge amount of interest, and the people that are in the room are testament to that. There are investors and potential investors who've been on the road for the last week or so with Rob Coneybear, who I've met, the most amazing talent. This is almost less about the capital that they bring, but the skill and the connections and the ability to grow our businesses. That is absolutely invaluable. They're in the room today, and they are amazing people, and we need to be welcoming and make sure that our settings are welcoming, are simple, are straightforward, are easy for them to just get their foot in the door. And then Invest New Zealand under Todd McClay will be the, hey, have you met this company? Have you met this company? And that aftercare of really introducing them to the New Zealand ecosystem.
Without putting words into your mouth, fundamentally the net effect of this you're pretty bullish about. We will see significantly more investor migrants and investment in New Zealand.
I'm absolutely confident we will, because of the people that I've spoken to and the queues of people and the number of companies that I've been visiting over the last little while who have increased the number of people in their business to deal with what they know is about to come. After today, I'm expecting their inboxes to be full because this is a significant change. And not only that, but we are internationally competitive. We might be still more expensive than other countries, but the settings are far more welcoming. And you think about Australia, who doesn't have an investor category at all, and the same with the UK. We are extraordinarily, well positioned, but also I think not only that, as the Prime Minister said earlier, unparalleled beauty, welcoming people, can-do attitude. I mean, Kiwis are some of the most entrepreneurial problem solvers in the world. And so, people want to come and invest here because of what we offer. So it's a two-way street. Yes, they're bringing their skills and their talent and their knowledge and their abilities and their connections, but we're offering them some pretty amazing stuff in return.
We're running out of time. I just 2 or 3 more. One of them, it's a thorny issue, but and I'm not sure where you've landed on this. Haven't gone through the detail of this, but if we think about Chinese investors, which have been significant in the past, one of the issues is this issue around the QDII, the Qualified Domestic Institutional Investor stuff. Fundamentally, China only allows its foreign exchange through one kind of a way. I think, if we're candid in this room, half of this room would want you to decide one way and half probably the other. Where have you landed on that sort of an issue? What's the rationale there?
That has been dealt with by the previous government, and we're not changing the settings. So I think the previous government got a lot wrong in this space, but one of the things they did get right was it doesn't matter which country you're from. I mean, I'm ambivalent. It is about making sure that funds that are coming in don't need to be repatriated back. And so the previous government made it very clear that when you are nominating your funds, it is from your bank account. They are your funds. We can trace those funds, and so what we don't want to see is money that has to be repatriated back to wherever it came from. It's not particularly China; it's any country, and so that issue has already been dealt with, and it's not something that we are going to change.
Because there's quite a number in this room who are in the sectors like international education, a bunch of other real economy sectors. I just want to come back to this work rights sort of point. You heard what I said to the Prime Minister, but I'm told by people in the transport sector, look, it's not exactly the issue of the moment right now, but if we get any kind of growth, there'll be truck driver shortages, and by the time we get that on the green list, we've got problems. I'm told that, if you take international education, which is a bit like tourism really, it's not back to those pre-COVID levels, and we want it back at that. we could be doing much more around some of the vocational stuff that gets on the list. Give us a sense of your, I suppose, values on that and where it's going.
There's a few things to unpack there. Firstly, when the economy starts to take off this year, and it will, I have all confidence that it will, Immigration New Zealand need to be on their, up on their foils, right? So we have made sure over the last year that our visa processing, especially in that work visa space, is schmick. And we've got it down to 32 days across, having to become accredited, the job check, and the actual visa itself. I mean, when we came into government, I think it was over 80 days, and it increased. And so we're down to 30 days. So we are match fit. We're ready to go. That was really important. The second part of the puzzle is not so much getting those workers in the country, but it's their ability to be able to stay here. Now, the previous government really restricted the settings around being able to get your residence. Now, look, if you've got a degree or you're earning tons of money or you're in a registered occupation, you're fine. But look, as you mentioned, if you are an excavation operator or a truck driver, there is no pathway to residence for you. And so right this red-hot moment in time, we're working on those residency settings to make sure that mostly, you're looking at our skilled tradies who just do not have a pathway to residence. We're working on that right now, and I just wanted to say thank you. There's a few people in the room. There's Malcolm Pacific who are here today, and Karen and Mark Williams and a few others who are helping me get this right, because as the Prime Minister said, I don't have all the answers, but they do, the David Coopers of the world do, and they're all helping us to get those settings right. So that's very important. And then the last thing you mentioned was about international education. I've been really focused, again, making sure we're on our foils. For the first time since I can remember in immigration, over the peak period in December, there were no wait times, there were no queues, and we were processing visas, and I believe, my officials in the room, they'll shoot me if I get it wrong, but it was something like 11 or 13 days to process a student visa over the peak time. So we have really focused, and I've driven my officials to make sure that we are not losing any students because we're not processing. We are back to previous student numbers before COVID, so we are back to there, but Nicola and I have ambition to massively grow that. So we are going to be making some changes in the student visa space, some minor ones. It's more about our internal processes and why are we doing, why are we declining certain students. So there's a number of work streams going on there to make sure that we are making the most of all of those opportunities.
Fantastic. Erica, some would say I focus on trivia, but I do have to ask, is schmick a real word?
Technical immigration
Are we going to find that in the dictionary?
Well, it's like your beard is particularly schmick.
Is my beard schmick? It's good to know. Put that on the TV, guys. I thought that was good. Well, thanks so much. It's been really insightful and interesting panel. I promise I just want to return to you. It may seem unrelated, but we've got a couple of hundred people here who've taken time out of what is kind of effectively a Waitangi a weekend. It just feels like it's possibly the right thing to kind of ask. I mean, a lot of heat in race around this time of the year. I mean, how do you assess our race relations as a country and where that's all going?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's been, I think there's been, division and frustration building up over a number of years. You've seen that in the last election campaign on things like Three Waters and also around Māori health authorities. But I just say to you, in my conversation with iwi leaders, and I meet with them regularly, had a great meeting actually, Nicola and I, with Ngāi Tahu just a few days ago, there is massive opportunity for the Māori economy to do exceptionally well in New Zealand. And when they do well, New Zealand does well. So, my view is to focus on improving outcomes for Māori, and that means certainly health and education and housing, but actually Māori want the same thing that all New Zealanders want, which is higher standards of living and higher incomes. And that's why when I talk to iwi leaders, they're on board with the growth agenda that we've got and they want to participate. Very interesting, 22 of our 149 projects are iwi-led or partnered projects in the fast track regime because they want to help get infrastructure built so they can create the economic foundations in place to actually help their communities do exceptionally well. So look, I appreciate we'll deal with the treaty principles bill as I've said before, but beyond that, rest assured, over the last year, the conversations with iwi leaders up and down the country have been very positive about how we can work together to get better outcomes for Māori, whether it's through investment and partnering with foreign capital as well, or things we're doing in social housing and other areas as well. So I'm very excited about that future.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, Christopher Luxon, Nicola Willis and Erica Sanford. Thank you very much for coming. Can I just invite Nassim Lalizari of Working In, Chief Customer Officer.
jobs, and that's really important to us as we drive into more levels of economic growth. And importantly, these investors are also bringing their skills, they're bringing their international connections, which is really valuable to New Zealand businesses as well to help them assist their growth as well. With that, we're all here, Nicola, Erica, Todd, to take any of your questions.
Prime Minister Pereira from 3 News, you yourself called this rollout plan, this announcement, not ambitious.
No.
It goes far enough?
Yeah, look, it's a fantastic program. It was a joke. I was talking about what we call these categories of visas, ambitious or more ambitious. And in any way you look at it, this is a fantastic thing for New Zealand. This gives us real competitive advantage versus other countries like the UK and Australia that have nothing like this. But most importantly, the winners here are New Zealanders, because New Zealanders will get to work in businesses that will grow faster, that will be able to pay them more wages and actually offer more jobs. And that's what we need this investment for.
Some immigration experts that we've spoken to today, though, say that the needle doesn't go far enough.
Oh, I think this is really fantastic. This is a really strong, internationally differentiated, highly competitive product that we're offering overseas investors to New Zealand. And I think it's brilliant, as I said, for everyday Kiwis. They benefit, they're the winners in this.
Why not scrap the foreign buyers ban?
Well, look, there's a number of things that we'll continue to progress and have conversations around. That's one of them, as there is other things as well.
Prime Minister, do you think it's okay, just looking at David Seymour's letter to the police regarding Philip Polkinghorne, do you think it's okay for MPs and ministers to be interfering in police investigations?
Well, look, New Zealanders expect that they want to have trust in our justice system and public confidence in our justice system. It's important that we have separation from police investigations and from political interference. But again, I've seen the story this morning. I'm not aware of the details, and I'm really not in a position to comment too much more about it.
Do you think it's a wise thing, though, for Mr Seymour to have commented on?
Look, again, as I said, I've just seen the media story this morning. I've been focused on actually making sure we're gripped up for this visa announcement today, and I'm not aware of the details, and I think it would be inappropriate for me to comment at this stage.
Just genuinely, though, do you think it would be wise for them to just comment?
Well, what's really important is that the public have trust in the justice system, and we all understand that there needs to be separation for police to be able to do their investigations, as well as obviously free from political interference, and that's a long-standing critical part to our system, and it's really important. But again, I haven't seen the details, can't comment too much on it.
How many people are you expecting in with this visa, and what have you modelled in terms of the amount of investment?
Yeah, I'll let Erica talk to that. Yep.
Look, we know in 2019, before the previous government's changes, through Investor 1 and 2, we had about 219 approved in principle who got their residence, and I'm confident that we will be back up to those numbers quite quickly. I've already spoken to 4 lawyers and immigration agents who, between just those 4, have 50 applicants ready to go, and another man just accosted me outside to say, since our announcement, he's already had 1 on the phone today. So normally we see a dip before it pops back up again when we have new rules in place for these visas. But I don't think that this will be the same. There is a lot of capital out there, as the Prime Minister has said, and there are a lot of people who are looking for a country like New Zealand with incredible people, a stable government, and businesses who are looking to grow. And so the people that were in that room today, some of the investors who've been here on a trip around New Zealand recently, have fallen in love with the place, they've fallen in love with Kiwis, they've fallen in love with our businesses, they want to invest here. So I'm confident that the numbers will climb quite quickly.
So I think in the presentation I mentioned 1.1 million in 2 years pre-COVID. Is that being modelled for the next?
2.2 billion.
It was 2.2 over 2 years. I think 1.1 billion was in 2019. Look, it's hard to say because the settings are different, and there are also different international things going on. Australia doesn't have a visa at the moment. The UK doesn't have one, whereas that was different in the past. So it's not just our settings, it's sort of comparative to other countries as well. So difficult to model, but I'm hoping that we will at least get back to where we were in 2019 pretty quickly.
And people won't be able to buy a property even for their own personal use, not even as investment under this. And if they have a visa under this, or?
Look, they can if they become a tax resident in this country and they meet the residency rules like any other resident. But, of course, these are people of the world and they travel in and out and they don't always meet the time and country. And so conversations are underway about how we might do things differently for our investors to be more welcoming to grow our economy.
How realistic is it to expect? I mean, I think some of your settings under this visa may compare favourably, but on the other hand, countries like the United Kingdom would allow non-citizens to buy property. So how favourably does this visa actually compare when you take those settings into account?
Look, we know that being able to purchase a house is a barrier. It's not a huge barrier. I've been talking to the potential investors out there. They're here, they're renting. They don't love it, but they're still here. So yes, it's a nice to have, and we will continue those conversations, but there are other things that are more important, like Nicola already mentioned, or the Minister already mentioned, the foreign tax rules, which we're also taking a look at, but also the settings of these visas. They have been far too complicated and far too difficult to meet the conditions, and that's why we've only seen 32 odd migrants being approved in principle in the last 3 years.
Prime Minister, sorry, the statement issued by Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters to the Cook Islands.
Yeah, look, I mean, we have a very special and a great relationship with the Cook Islands people, and as you know, we're celebrating 60 years of being in free association with our rather unique constitutional model. Yes, we've had a series of differences around passports, around shipping registry, and also around potential trading arrangements with other countries or agreements with other countries. What we expect in the spirit of our constitutional arrangement is transparency. The Foreign Minister is handling, I think, the issue very well, and we expect transparency, and that's not what we've seen.
So the strongly worded statement that he put out, you're fine with?
Oh, absolutely, fully support it. I think the Foreign Minister is doing an excellent job of raising our concerns, as I have done also with the Prime Minister as well separately. And our view is that we expect a transparent relationship where these things are openly discussed, and that hasn't happened this time.
Why do you think he did that today?
I don't know. Those are issues ultimately for the Cook Islands Prime Minister. But what I'd just say is that we have a great relationship with the Cook Islands people. It's a very special relationship. That constitutional arrangement of being in free association with New Zealand gives Cook Islanders tremendous benefits as New Zealanders, as part of the New Zealand family. When we have differences like this, we expect them to be discussed very openly and very transparently, and that hasn't happened here.
Just on that, we've seen that China has put a bit of money into Samoa for the Manawanui clean-up. Do you have anything?
I'm not aware that has happened, but I just say to you that we're making good progress on the Manawanui clean-up. We've been uplifting good quantities of fuel, and we've had ongoing conversations as recently as the last few days with Prime Minister Fiame about what comes next, and we'll announce that in due course.
And just on a different note as well, Labour is calling out the government for not being one of the 79 countries that signed on to the statement condemning the US for sanctioning the ICC. Do you have anything to say to that?
Well, I think I've said before that we believe in the rules-based system. Part of that is our obligations under the ICC and the ICJ, and we'll continue to uphold those obligations.
Why do you think it's important? Why do you think the Cook Islands are obliged to tell New Zealand what they're up to?
We have a rather unique constitutional arrangement, which is as part of a realm country, which is what's called in free association with New Zealand, and that means that New Zealand provides has certain responsibilities under that agreement around defence, around security, around issues of foreign affairs and other things, and we expect to have those conversations very openly between the two governments, and that's happening at an official level and also at a leader-to-leader level. But again, we expect transparency, and that hasn't happened yet.
Last one, thanks, guys.
I mean, Ireland, the camp and the talk, I mean, there's this talk about population policy. I mean, Ireland, Singapore, all of these countries, although they have similar populations, they actually have much higher population density, which some argue means that it's much easier to get growth if you have higher population density, cheaper, it's more efficient to provide infrastructure in cities. Do you think it's time for New Zealand to have a conversation about a population policy, increasing the population?
Well, look, as I alluded to before, you've got to link your immigration conversations to your capacity to build and develop and grow infrastructure, and also for what's happening in your economy as to where you've got labour shortages. And those three things have to reconcile, and that's a very difficult job, but Eric is doing that dynamically as we deal with changing economic conditions, as we think about the infrastructure pipeline that we need to build out. Obviously, immigration settings become part of that conversation. But for us here in New Zealand right now, as I've said before, there's a huge opportunity for us in a world that has billions and billions of cash to invest. We want to be able to put the welcome mat out and say, please bring your money to New Zealand. Thank you for bringing it to New Zealand. Let's help you get that capital into the businesses that desperately need it, so that they can grow, so they create jobs and higher incomes for everyday New Zealanders. That's what this is all about. And so for everyday New Zealanders, this is a really good move because it actually improves the prosperity of New Zealand and ultimately improves
improves the productivity of our firms, which in turn has real benefits for Kiwis.
Finance Minister,
Yes, sure.
quickly. Minister, are you expecting a flood of US investors?
Look, I think we'll have interest from all over the world, and that will certainly include American investors.
With the dollar, with the dollar being, attractive to them, and also a second-term Trump administration, do you think any of those factors?
Look, I think that there will be people from both the United States, from China, from throughout Europe and Asia who look at New Zealand and see a country that is fundamentally safe, has stable democratic institutions, abundant natural resources, great free trade arrangements, and looks at New Zealand and says, that's a place where my money can grow. So we'll be welcoming everyone who meets the criteria of these visas. I agree with the view that says New Zealand has an incredible economic future ahead of it, and I think people from around the world will increasingly see that.
They just can't buy a house here.
Well, as the Immigration Minister highlights, once they become permanent tax residents and have been resident here for significant periods of time, then yes, they can purchase homes under the current rules.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day. See you.